All right, welcome to the third and final video in this series on my process for making a website from scratch. In the second part, we talked about how to generate copy, how to mock up designs in Figma, and create a style guide to use for Webflow. And so if you haven't seen that, or the first video in the series, go ahead and watch those before you watch this. Otherwise, this one probably won't make sense. But in this video, we're going to talk about how to create a style guide in Webflow, how to import our designs into Webflow, and then just designing in Webflow and making it responsive, all that good stuff. So last time we left off in Figma and we had a few things. So we had sort of a rough design here on a design direction that we wanted to go in. We have a style guide here, which has our brand color and different backgrounds and overlays that we're going to use, as well as text colors. So from here, to start off any project, to make life a lot easier, is I will clone a Reloom style guide. This is free to use. Even if you don't use Reloom, you can use this, and it's really, really helpful. So when I clone this, what it gives me is, we're going to go to the style guide, is it basically gives you a style guide, and you can tailor this. And so the first thing that I do when I start on a project is I edit the colors in the style guide first, because if I work on this first, then the design in Webflow will be so much simpler, because I'm editing all of the parent components, or parent classes rather. And so basically all I have to do if I want to make a global change to the website is just change the style guide, and it'll change everything on the site. So it's really important to have a style guide because it makes life so much easier. So the first thing that I do is I go to the library and I import all of my colors. So I go to Figma and I just look at the hex and I just copy and paste them into each of these, and I create my brand colors, my neutral colors, my success. And then once I have that, then what's nice is Reloom has background colors, border colors, and I can assign those to those different colors that I had just assigned here, which is really, really cool. And so I basically just get all of my colors situated, and from there it's a matter of doing the style guide. So once I get the colors situated, then it's figuring out what font I want. So I think I use Lotto. I figure out the sizing that I want. Truthfully, I think I just went with the stock sizing that Reloom had, and then just figuring out, basically this is just where you edit your typography, right? And your colors. If your heading is a different color, you can change that here. And then the other thing that I do, aside from typography, is I'll work on, let's keep going down, I'll work on styling buttons. So this is where I'll also style buttons. And so I'll work on what I want my button to look like, as well as a secondary button, tertiary button. And again, that just makes life so much easier when I'm designing, because I already have this set up. So any change that I make to this button class will reflect on any of the buttons using this class within Webflow. So the whole premise of doing all of this first is that it just saves from so much redundancy, and it just makes everything so much more efficient. And so that's why I always try to work on a style guide first when I can. And then once I do that, then what I can do is I can import my design from Reloom into Webflow. And so what's neat, I'm actually going to go ahead and do that. So I'll copy this and I'll go to Webflow, and I'll just open up a new page here. And I can paste it. And what it will do is, boom, this is kind of like what it looks like. This part's broken, don't worry about that. But it'll spit out what Reloom has. And so you can see it's trying to follow my style guide that I laid out, but this is where I would go through and I would refine things. Like this button here is not accurate, so I would change this to maybe be is tertiary, or whatever I happen to use for that color, or for that background, which that one's not it. But in any case, I would do that, and from here just start designing. So typically what I do, I'm going to go to my main one. Typically what I do is there's probably multiple ways of doing this. I like working section by section. So I like fleshing out the hero first and getting that fully fleshed out. So that means getting the asset ready. Like I have a background video here. So I had to create this background video in DaVinci Resolve and then compress it to make it small enough to be a background video. I needed to create this text effect. So I'll even work on interactions in here. And I just want to work on each section in its entirety first before moving on to the next. So then I'll work on the nav next, work out how I want the interactions for links to be, and for each section, that's exactly what I do. Now the good thing is that because we pretty much fleshed out the copy in the wireframe, there's really not much to do in terms of that goes. You just sort of, well, it should have already copied from the wireframes. There's really not much that needs to do there. So literally, I can spend all my time on the design component and how I want things to look. So with these cards, I'm figuring out some of these effects were baked in from the Reloom wireframe. But for example, I wanted this, when it's fading away, I wanted it to be more transparent. So I had to add that in there. So I'm basically working section by section and fleshing out each of these different things, adding in relevant CMS. Like this is a CMS collection of my recent YouTube videos. So once I reach this section, it's getting the CMS up and running and kind of just hooking everything up as far as that goes. And then once I design each and every section one by one, then it's a matter of just making things responsive. And the cool thing here is that pretty much most of the things should be responsive out of the gate. Again, the cool thing about using Reloom is that their stuff comes already responsive for the most part. So, you know, as you go through, it's already responsive, and that's just wonderful. But if there are things that aren't accurate, or if there's some things that look a little bit wonky, like in the future, I'll probably decrease the padding here. This seems like a little much. But that's what I would do, is just sort of figure out those little flaws when it comes to responsiveness in the different screen sizes. But that's pretty much it. Like there's not much to this. Like I don't want to dive into like how to use Webflow. That's not the point of this. It's really just to give you like an idea on my process on how I go about building web pages. So really, once I get in this video, really the main thing is building out that Webflow style guide. That's like honestly like the most crucial step of this entire thing, is just making sure I work on the style guide first, making sure I have all my colors in. I basically just do all the grunt work first so that I can later on just dedicate all of my creative and brain power to working on the final design. So once I have the style guide, then it's really just a matter of going to the wireframe and just fleshing all this out. And then last but not least, making it responsive. And then from there, you could do your things that you should do and add in your metadata and stuff like that. I still need to do that, but that's a good thing to do. I didn't do that yet, but that's a thing I'm going to do. But I hope this series has been helpful. There's a lot of different ways to go about a website design process. There's a lot of processes that people use. And so mine is certainly not the best, but it is one that works for me. And I think that's really the most important thing, is finding something that works for you. And I think the way to do that is just put in reps. Like you will find things that naturally work for you. And the way that I came across this process wasn't by watching a ton of tutorials on every single person's process, but it's really just watching someone build out something from scratch and talking about their process, and then just sort of cherry picking those ideas and then ultimately fleshing it out by practicing on projects on my own. And so that's the main thing that I want you to get from this, is hopefully you are able to cherry pick some ideas from this series into things that you can incorporate in your web design process. But the last thing that I would want you to do is to just start, watching all these videos on web design process and watching all of these videos of people creating websites, because that's ultimately not going to make you a better designer. The thing that made me a better designer and the thing that made me even have a process is just the repetition of creating. And I think that's the most important thing. So if you take anything from this, it's literally just create more websites, and you will figure out where your inefficiencies are and where your efficiencies lie, and how you can turn those inefficiencies into efficiencies. And that will naturally form a process for you. So I hope you found this helpful. If you did, be sure to subscribe. And until next time, I will see you in the next video. Take care.